This is PBS.
About Your House with Bob Yap was partially underwritten by the National Trust for Historic Preservation.
In past places and future spaces, from main streets to back roads, we're helping Americans bring preservation home. The National Trust for Historic Preservation.
Welcome to today's program, and we call it Building Outside Structures. Now, I made my producer insane because I added this carriage house at the last minute, and of course they hate that. But this carriage house was built around the turn of the century, and it's behind a really nice bed and breakfast inn, and I wanted to have it in the background to illustrate a couple of points. This program is about building things out in your yard, whether it be a deck, a gazebo, an outbuilding, garages, those types of things. But you don't have to plop something in your yard or on your house that looks like it shouldn't be there. You want to do something that kind of flows with your house, and that's what this program's all about. Now, we're going to go take a look at a garage right now, and I'm going to let you decide whether you think it's appropriate to this old house or not. And here it is. Now, you tell me, you think it flows with this Queen Anne house? Look at the narrow clapboard up here and the very steep pitched roof. Real representative of this Victorian era house here, and a lot of others as well. Now over here, this garage, well, at least they painted it the same color, but look how wide the clapboard is compared to the narrow clapboard on the house. Big difference. And then up here, you can see a very shallow pitched roof where the house has a very steep pitched roof, so it doesn't really flow that well. Now, it's a standard garage, and if that's what you can afford, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a couple other things I like about this, though. The garage slab here, the approach coming up, has room for 3 people to park that are coming to visit, and I think that's always important if you can get that in. And then, of course, we've got the garage width here. It's very wide, so there's room for a shop or storage, all kinds of stuff like that. Let's take a look at another garage. Now, this garage is standard, but it has a steeper pitched roof, and it has vertical type barn siding. It has the look of a carriage house. And look at it on the other side, a gazebo. Now, see the pointed roof there? It has several sides to it. It's actually mirroring what's going on with the main house, which is a tower with a pointed turret and lots of steep pitched roofs. It works. Well, now that we've talked about what's politically correct in garages behind your house, I'm just kidding. I really don't like that word. But the fact of the matter is that there are some ways that you can affordably build structures behind your house that flow with your house better than what your standard garage can be. And if you can only afford a standard garage, that's life. Now, I also want to talk about today 2 things. Setbacks for garages, how to place your garage, so that you don't have it out in the middle of the alley or whatever. And I want to talk to you a little bit about inspectors. You can't build a garage without a permit. Now, inspectors are not your adversaries. They are actually people that work with you and will help you brainstorm. So don't be afraid of inspectors. A lot of people have misconceptions about that. Now, Steve Moeller is the chief building inspector in the city of Rock Island where I live, and he is involved in a lot of my projects, and it's really a partnership between the two of us. I find that Steve's easy to work with. He's tough, but he's fair, and that's what you really want in an inspector. And I got him to come out here today. Steve, thanks a lot for coming in.
Hi, Bob. How are you today?
Good to see you. I wanted to talk a little bit about setbacks on garages and that type of thing, but I was standing on this slab thinking, whoa, wait a minute, something's not right here. It doesn't look like a very good pour, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have a proper finish on it. It appears to be not poured monolithic that would not meet our criteria.
Yeah, well, I'm going to let you deal with that later.
Okay.
But come over here with me for a second, because I want to see what we've got going on in setback here. Now, on the side of a garage in our jurisdiction here, we're looking at what, 3 feet minimum?
3
You got
foot.
a tape measure?
Yes, sir.
Let's just
sure
check
do.
this out and see what we've got.
Okay.
Okay, I'm about there.
We're at approximately 7.5 feet, which would more than meet that
Way in. That's
current
good.
setback requirement.
It's really probably a better idea to get as far away from a lot line as you can, I would think.
True.
Now, to the alley, I think it's 6 foot. Is that right?
That's in our jurisdiction, yes.
Okay, let's check this one out too.
Okay.
Since you got the tape out.
We're at almost 15 foot, so
Wow,
they would
so
more than meet that.
We're well in that. So really the slab's the only real problem here, and they'll have to deal with that. I think one of the things that I think is really important to all of this is that when you're building a garage, you want to try to make sure that you're putting it someplace that's convenient. If you put it too close to the alley, you can't swoop in off the alley and get to it. My garage is built too close to the alley, and it was built back in the 60s. This one's far enough back to get the arc that you need to get in. You also might want to consider being closer to the house so you don't have as far to walk to get to the house. But remember this, there's always a way to build a garage that looks a little bit more appropriate with your house. Now, let's go take a look at a really neat carriage house that's being built behind a nationally registered property over in Davenport, Iowa. Well, this really neat garage is not the carriage house I intended to show you, but it used to be sitting where this gorgeous carriage house is, and it was moved to the side yard. This was really well done. I mean, incredibly well done. And a builder built it, and it sits behind this gorgeous Italianate house, which is on the National Register of Historic Places. Really nice job for design and flow and everything. Now take a look at that garage behind the Queen Anne, and you tell me which one flows better with the house. Well, it's pretty obvious. Now, there's a couple things about this that I like. First of all, you can have a deck out here with railings and everything. And then on the inside of this could be an apartment if you wanted it to. And look at the framing in here. You've got micro-lam beams and all this new technology for the joists. There are those I-beam types. It's just a really well-built structure. There's no question about it. Now, you can expect to spend, around $20,000, give or take, to build this, finished on the outside and unfinished on the inside. If you wanted to make an apartment, put in a bath, those kinds of things, gosh, you could spend all the way up to $80,000, but $50,000 is probably more realistic range without getting too fancy. It kind of depends on where you live in America. Just taking a rest for a second because my crew drives me like a mule. But what a great place to take a rest. This is an incredibly elaborate deck, and I wanted to start off here on this segment to give you an idea of what the top end of what you can get is. Now this entire deck, as we're walking through, you'll see, ran around $20,000, and it has really nice lighting here, and it has some tubular railings. It has a lot of really nice features, a lot of fun to hang out on a deck like this. Now when you're considering putting a deck together in your house or out behind your house or in your yard or wherever you're going to do one, keep this in mind. Form follows function. Why are you building the deck in the first place? Decide what you're going to use it for. Maybe you entertain a lot. Maybe you really do want some serious privacy behind your house. Or maybe you're a sculptor and you're out in the yard and you don't want anybody to see your masterpiece. Whatever the reason is, form follows function. If you just remember that, your deck's going to look beautiful because it has a great function to it. Now, this deck even has a hot tub. You can do just about anything you want with a deck. When your builder comes first thing in the morning, he's going to make a mess, but what he's doing is he's prepping to build your new deck. And this is a power auger. It's a one-man unit. You can get them in two-man as well, and they can really dig holes. You know, these holes are really hard to dig with what we call the idiot stick here, but with an auger you can really go down. Now my dad and I put in about 100 of these fence posts with an auger when I was a kid. That was my first taste of it, and it was a lot of work, but it was a lot better than a post hole digger. Now here in the Midwest, where we are today, you need to be 42 inches below grade. That's where the frost line is. And we're at 44 here, so we're below the frost line. Now what they'll do is they'll pour concrete down into the bottom of the hole and pour a pad, and then they'll put the post in on top of it and fill up with concrete around the outside of the post. The post is treated and it's rated for below grade. That's really important to remember. Now come up about 6 inches from grade with the concrete and then fill in with dirt, so when the water gets down around the post, it dissipates out into the yard rather than down around the concrete in the post. Now, a couple things you have to remember when you're doing this. First of all, find a deck company that knows what the heck they're doing. That's really important. Check around with friends and neighbors. Get referrals. Secondly, you got to make sure the utility companies have been called, because if you drill a hole with that auger, it's going to eat up a water line so fast it'll blow your mind. The other one is you have to make sure there's a permit on the job. Now, all these things are important. Now, here in the Midwest, they're running about $10 to $12 a square foot for a deck, and that'll vary a dollar or two either way on either coast or down south, wherever you happen to be. Remember, utility companies, permit, quality deck companies. Those are the main things you have to remember when you're starting out on a deck. Well, I'm totally blown away. They've finished the deck. They're cleaning things up. I mean, they're literally done, and we've only been gone 6 hours. Right tool for the right job makes a big difference. I wanted to show you down underneath the treated lumber, the pressure treated lumber that they use for the framing and all the different parts that hold the deck up, but they covered it up, so I can't. But what I can show you is the flooring. Now this deck here is cedar, and they've butted the boards up together. Now normally you'll be accustomed to seeing gaps in between these boards, and they'll appear because this is a little bit moist, this wood, and as it shrinks you'll see some gaps. Another critical thing about a deck is railing height. Now code says that it has to be 36 inches from the decking. And we have 36 inches. Now, these are the balusters, or some people call them spindles, and we need to have 4 inches between those, and we have 4 inches. The reason for that is you don't want a kid to stick his head through there and squish it. That wouldn't be too much fun. So just remember to hire somebody that knows what they're doing. Now, here's a deck builder that really knew what they were doing, and I really like this deck. It has 2 levels, it has a hot tub, really nice railings all the way around. And it has a nice newel post. That's where the railings tie in right there. It has a cap on it. And those 3 little grooves are called flutes. And they're done with a router, which only takes a couple of minutes, but it's amazing how much it adds to the look of the deck. Now, I like to see the footings for a deck be a pier that goes below the ground, down below the frost line, and then comes up above the grade. And you can see right here, the post sits on top of it. So if the post ever rotted out, you could just replace it and your foundation would still be good. Isn't that a great looking deck? It doesn't take much, just a little imagination. The most popular of all the yard structures are fences, and they are everywhere in America today. The thing about a fence is all you have to do is think about what's called form follows function. Now, simply put, that means you decide why you need something, and if you accomplish it well, the design will look good. Form follows function. So anyway, this particular fence, and you can see Fred here, he's a beast. We had 2 reasons why we needed this fence. One is because the house was torn down over here and we wanted to frame the yard in. Now this fence cost about $30 a lineal foot. It's an iron reproduction fence. You can go all the way up to $150 a lineal foot for fancier stuff. But it also is strong, sturdy, keeps Fred inside and Delilah, our other dog. But we couldn't afford to do it all the way around the yard, so we decided to go with a cedar dog-eared fence. And these cost about $12 a lineal foot. Remember, each foot this direction, $12. So these are some of the things that you need to keep in mind. Remember, always think about why you need a fence, and then if you do it the right way, it'll look great. Another of my favorite period fences is a picket fence. Now, this is a standard little 3-foot picket, little sharp points here. It's got a nice turned finial up here on top of a treated post. Now, all fences have to have treated posts. This is all made out of cedar. Now, this was built by a contractor, and it's going to run you between $8 and $12 a lineal foot depending on which part of the country you're in. We've looked at a couple of fences installed by contractors, but you know what? You might decide to go ahead and do it yourself, and that's great. The best place to go is out to the lumber yard, because when you get out there, you're going to see an incredible display of all different kinds of fences. Now, this is a Gothic little picket fence. I like it, and comes all complete.
Heidi ho, neighbor. Have you ascertained the philosophical ramifications of this fence?
Wrong show, buddy. Anyway, this is a Gothic fence, and it runs about $30 for an 8-foot section, and that includes your horizontal pieces, both of them, and the posts that come with it. Now, next to that, we have what's called a dog-eared, and that's been cut off on the edges and on the corners, and that's why they call it a dog ear. It's more of a privacy fence, 6 foot tall, and for an 8-foot section of this with all the posts and everything you need, you're looking at around $65 for an 8-foot section. The nice thing about the lumberyard is the selection that you have. So come on out if you're going to do it yourself. Lumberyards have lots of information about how to do things, to put the posts in, that type of thing. They're your friend as well. And come out and look at this great selection. This is what my dad always called an idiot stick. And my wife would be really glad to see me out here actually doing this stuff. It's a hand auger, and we're going to talk a little bit about fences and how you put them in right now. Now, a hand auger is one way to do it. The other way to dig a fence post is with a power auger. And it's going to cost you between $40 and $70 a day to rent a power auger, depending on how big or small of one you get, and if it's a two-man or a one-man. And that's something that you need to remember. It's also a lot of work to use a power auger, but a heck of a lot less work than the idiot stick. Now, let's talk about a couple of things here. First of all, on all fences, you use a treated post. Even this fence right here is cedar. There's no question about it. I like cedar. It's a much better look than treated. But the treated post has to be rated for below grade. Now, when the treated post goes into the ground, it has dirt contact or whatever happens to be around it, so it needs to be rated for below grade for the treated. There's two ways to put in a post. You always dig the hole for the post down below the frost line. Now, here in the Midwest, we're looking at 42 inches below grade. Well, out in Seattle, it's only 18 inches, so you have to check around with your local code department. Make sure you get a permit, too. Check your setbacks. Every community has different zoning laws, and you want to make sure you get your setbacks away from your neighbors right, and also so you can maintain the fence. Now, once you've dug the hole down below the frost line, you have two choices. One is to go ahead and pour concrete around the post to just 6 inches below the grade. Now, the grade's the top of the ground, of course, so you want to be 6 inches below. That way, if water were to get in here, it would dissipate before it hit the concrete and get down in between the concrete and the post. The way I like to do it is with crushed limestone. I dig my hole down below the frost footing and pour in a couple inches of this down in the bottom. Then I put the post down in there and I put this in and I wet the stuff down and tamp it all the way around and keep putting more layers in and more layers in until I get up to the top. And you can take that just about right up to the grade, put a little dirt over the top of it. That way, if water does get around the post, it's getting down through the rock. But remember, cement is made with lime. So this will tend to bond together too and make the post sit in there very tight. Welcome to Bob's basketball clinic. Well, I'm just kidding. But anyway, I came into the garage to find this b-ball so Phil and I could play some hoops, my buddy, but I can't find anything else in here. I couldn't find anything else in here if my life depended on it. It's a miracle I found the basketball. There's yard stuff and lawnmowers. There's snow blowers and bikes. It is totally wrecked. And he's always whining about why he can't get his car in the garage. Well, no wonder. But there's a solution to this problem, and that's a yard shed. Let's go take a look at a few of them. Well, a great solution to getting all that junk out of your garage is to build a lawnmower mansion. Oh, it's a yard shed. All different kinds of them out there. This is a really nice contractor-built unit. It has really nice batten board doors on it. Lots of space inside, which is really important. And the construction's important. You notice these roof rafters are on 16-inch centers. They're tight to the ridge board up at the top. That's real important. The studs inside are 16 inches on center, just the way they're supposed to be. Nice plywood floor inside and lots of space with shelves, all kinds of stuff. Now, the way that these sit on the ground is really kind of important too. Right here, we have what's a cinder block, actually, a concrete block, and they're all the way around this. It's not really footed in the sense that you'd foot a porch or a house. If it settles a little bit, they can shim it. Sometimes they use great big gigantic timbers, treated timbers underneath like a sled, or you can put them on a concrete slab. And you want to check with your building department in your community to make sure that you're doing it right. If you have to get a permit, do it. But there's something else that's really important on how it relates to the house. Now, we're in Cape Cod today, and this is a Victorian shingle house. They're real prevalent just after 1900 around here, and they did a really nice job. But this house is only 3 years old, and it's in a historic district. So they had to go get a certificate of appropriateness from the local historic folks to get it in massing and size so that it looks like it's supposed to be there with all the historic houses around it. Had to do the same thing with the yard shed. And that's just a great process because it makes it look like the yard shed belongs there. It was well designed. That's important. It has the hip roof, the gable, and even has batten board doors. Now, they paid about $2,600 to have a contractor build this yard shed, and you can expect to pay anywhere from $1,400 to $2,600 for yours. front porches are just fabulous. I love these wraparound porches. You see them on a lot of old houses. Now, one of the things that's happened in our culture today is that everybody's moved into the backyard. They're hiding out on their decks and on their patios, and there's some good stuff about that. But I like the front porch. You can sit out here, you can see what your neighbors are doing, and you can like snoop on people, and that's really a lot of fun. You get a telescope out here, whatever. It'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, I think that one thing I see that bothers me is a lot of screened-in porches. Now, you take an old open porch like this and screen it in, and it really kind of looks absurd. Now, that's not to say that you can't do it, absolutely, but it's something I really want you to consider because there is another alternative. See what I mean? Aren't these great? These gazebos are tucked out into the corner of the yard. It's shady, the wind's blowing through. And you could screen this in if you opted to, just like a porch, and then you wouldn't have to mess up your historic porch on your house. You do it out in the corner of the yard. It's even more private, you know, out on the front porch. Everybody's watching and you're watching them. Now, there's a couple of things about this contractor-built gazebo I want to show you, and that's the interior roof structure of the gazebo. Now, look at it real hard. What do you see? Well, what I see is a spider web. It looks like a spider web, and that's one of the strongest substances in nature, so this is going to be really strong. A couple other things that make it strong and work real well are you have double 2x6 coming up here. They're all treated. In fact, the whole gazebo is made out of treated lumber. It ends in this little peak up here. It's structural, but it also is really pleasant to look at. The only thing on this gazebo that isn't made out of treated lumber is the cedar shingle roof. Now you see these spaced boards here that allows part of the shingle to show. So when it gets wet, air circulates underneath here, circulates on the top, it dries out real quickly. And you know what? This is really well made. Now it is a builder basic model. So it has a couple of things that go to that point, and that is a flat spindle balustrade railing spindle here instead of a really fancy turned one. And then you have a 2x material for a bracket here that looks real nice. And this little spandrel up here has little flat pieces instead of little turn pieces. Well, it's not as fancy when you get up real close, but it just gives the whole image of a really fancy one, and that's important. Now you're looking at around $2,500 to $3,000 to have the builder come out here, plop it down on some blocks that are laid on the ground. Now I kind of like to see them built on footings. That would be where this post goes down to the ground and sits on a concrete pier that goes down below the grade, 42 inches here in the Midwest because that's where the frost line is, and it's really, really structural that way. Now the problem is, of course, if you sell the house, you can't take the gazebo with you. I know it sounds weird, but if you put it on blocks, you can literally hire somebody to come in with a flatbed truck and take the gazebo with you when you sell your house. I'm not sure you'd want to, but it's something you sure could do. Now, I have something really interesting in the gazebo genre to show you. You interested? Come on, let's go. Boy, this sandblasted glass turned out great. It's even got the house number on it. That's really neat.
Thanks, Bob.
This is my friend Dawn, and her partner Trish and they did something very, very unique. Now, we just got done looking at a contractor-built gazebo, and they have a lumber package that the contractor provides and builds it. And if you're going to do it yourself, you're going to have a lumber package as well. But what they did is they salvaged materials to build really it's a gazebo, but it's a pavilion. It's so big. Now you can see from the photographs, the house next door, it had to be torn down, but they salvaged every single piece. I mean, did you save the nails?
A few.
Yeah, I bet you did. So tell me, what was the process in tearing down the house, building the unit?
It took probably about 4 weeks to tear it down, and then we've worked on it off and on for a couple summers, and probably will again this summer.
It's almost done.
Just real close.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, listen, I've got to go feed the dogs,
Oh,
but
fine, abandon
I'm going to
me.
run.
Okay.
So, see you later.
All right, we'll see you. And right in front of me is what you would call a pavilion. I just can't call it a gazebo, but we can. And there it is. It's beautiful. It's got cresting on the top, the original columns off the porch of the house they tore down. I mean, this thing is absolutely gorgeous. This archway was inside the house. They even salvaged that. Salvaging materials means the landfills don't get filled up, and you can get beautiful things like this. Now, remember this. You don't have to build something out in your yard that looks like aliens plopped it down. It can look like it's supposed to be there, whether it's a fence, a garage, an outside yard structure, a deck, or a gazebo. You can do it and make it look right, but the costs are going to vary a little bit. thanks for spending some time with me today. Until next time, I'm Bob Yap about your house.
About Your House with Bob Yap was partially underwritten by the National Trust for Historic Preservation.
In past places and future spaces, from main streets to back roads, we're helping Americans bring preservation home. The National Trust for Historic Preservation.